have another EU-funded project. It's going to be a fantastic question about the role of public funding, actually, especially maybe to see the kind of innovations that maybe is required here, right? In this case, an EU project called OpenNext, led by Robert Mies. Robert Mies studied industrial engineering with a specialization in mechanical engineering at the TU Berlin. During this time, he's also gained practical experience in Siemens for 3.5 years. And since 2016, he's been a research associate at the Department of Machine Tools and Factory Management at TU Berlin, and now leading OpenNext. The purpose of OpenNext is to share ideas and knowledge openly on digital platforms, so that together with the 19 projects EU-wide, we can establish new collaborations between companies and consumers to fundamentally change the way we create, produce, and distribute products. Thank you, Robert, for joining us today. Over to you.
Hi, can you hear me well? Perfect, okay. I'd actually like to thank you for the opportunity. I'm not going to speak freely, only because you contacted me 2 days ago, and I thought I'd make a quick presentation to run you through our ideas. So I just share my screen if that's okay. Share. All right, I think you can see my screen now. I'm just gonna go also on full screen. Yeah, you introduced the project very well already, so I don't have to say much about the project. Thank you. Just sharing a screen worked. Full screen is another thing altogether somehow right now. There's this button and that happens. Or this button. Right. So I'm actually here because we have a position on the funding with projects for COVID. In general, in terms of open source hardware, we feel that it would be great to have more funding. In fact, that's why I wanted to speak today. For open source hardware projects is also what we think. So we wrote open source hardware projects here as well. And there should be more business models. Let me just make this a bit smaller and put myself maybe up here or us. So the OpenNext project itself actually is running for 3 years. We just started last year, and we have 19 partners from 7 European countries, and Wikifactory is also part of it, which is great. The idea is that we want to facilitate collaborative product creation by companies and communities of consumers and makers through new mindset, new business models, new design processes, and new collaborative software solutions. So if what you see here is maybe the project idea or the architecture, we think it starts in a way, it's a cycle, a continuous cycle how open source hardware products emerge. And it starts from engaging in these interesting processes that we see in this field. And we think that there could be a great chance to create a much more versatile open source development ecosystem and bring in also new players like SMEs. And we really see Fab Labs and makerspaces as the key actors here also that can bring this along. This is part of what we do in the project. Like you see here on this O, this is like an O that's open, like the open source hardware cork as well. The idea is also you need business models, you need an ICT infrastructure, you need to also think about prototyping of how to do it. In fact, you need to think about closing the physical virtual gap, and for that you need to think about a lot of challenges to overcome them at the moment. And let's say we're only at the start of this journey. So our project is trying to do something about that. But let me say more, I have to check the time. Let me say more in terms of 2 cases of where I think we could maybe see some elements of where we stand. So right now, can I move this a little? Yes, no, I can't move this. So right now we have one interesting project, which I'm just using for an example. I'm not gonna yeah, make any, let's say, marketing for it and say this is the best project that I see out there right now. But it's a project called Corolla with a company here in Berlin called Micron, or their Berlin branch at least, and actually many others. Yeah, so I just put this here from all the partners I could see in the presentation. And the idea is to have scalable open source containerized mass production. So they want to produce containers, ship them to clients, or also for people to produce them themselves. And one container could produce a capacity of 3,000 masks per hour using non-woven fabrics in a 20-foot shipping container. So we know that a lot of investment went into that from some people who work in the project, especially from this company here. And they want to recover their investment, but so they have not published yet the documents completely for this container here. But they've actually completed the documentation almost. So yeah, they don't want to publish now before they have, of course, found a good way, a good business model about it. And one way could be crowdfunding. However, I mean, there are different organizations involved, like you see here, and there are different ways of how they could go. And if the crowdfunding is not a way, they're also thinking just simply as doing build to orders with clients. So the risk for the company is not so high. And actually, I just put the company here because we think that the company really enabled this this collaboration with their skills or with their resources. But the whole actually community here or network is important. So this is just one example where we see a company engaging and bringing in their skills. And this is a automized engineering service provider. Another example is what was just mentioned is that we see, this is case 2, we see that there are protection visors produced, in this case by a Berlin Student Initiative originally. So there was a student, Paul Jerchel, at the Beuth Hochschule here in Berlin. And he had the idea to produce shields and protective shields. And yeah, so this information here I have from our good friends from Open Source Ecology Germany. They also update us on this project. And I find it quite interesting, and we could have used other initiatives all over Europe where we've seen this. But they're producing quite some output every day, 550 shields. They had a lot of donations, from what I was told, of injection molded mounting clips. So they're not trying to 3D print this. They have also found a good way of finding production resources. And you see a lot of partners here on the right. You see Cadus, which is a Berlin nonprofit, actually shipping the masks. And you see the Beuth Hochschule, where the idea came from. This is also interesting because I put some links here. I'll share this with you afterwards if there's any way to share this. Because especially in the second article here in the German Spiegel, which is a big magazine, actually they argue that from the project actually that there should be structural funding. We also believe so. There needs to be more structural funding. It's quite unfortunate that it's so difficult for open source hardware projects to get funding. We also see at the same time that the business model question is a question here. And we see that you need to have a general business model. This is my last slide, I think, that I prepared, yes. So we're thinking along the lines of actually promoting more funding, at least for now, yeah. If you have a stable business model, that's great. And we see here different avenues. But one important avenue is also, and I think I'm going over time now, but I'm just going to say a bit more about standardization, that you need to be able to prove something at the end of the day if you want to get funding. So we're working together with our colleagues to promote open source hardware standardization. And one project I want to tell you about is the DIN-SPEC 3105 project, which is coordinated by the Open Source Ecology Germany e.V. Again. And we're working closely with them to, this will come out in June soon. It's a publicly available specification which supports the requirements for explains the requirements for documentation, and also the assessment of, it allows the assessment of openness of open source hardware. So it specifies a whole procedure for that. And This is with the Dean. The Dean supported us here to make this project happen. But also we think that the IEEE might be an interesting standardization body to be the home of new standards. So there's a preprint out there, which I will also share with these slides from Jeremy Bonmaison and his team, who we work with together also in the Open Next project. And they argue that, there could be more initiative from the Dean and the IEEE, for example, to host open source hardware community initiatives. Having said that, here's just some general information about our project. What's our position on business model and funding? I hope is clear a little bit from the position I took here. To say to the previous speakers, maybe we are not as radical, maybe in terms of our ideas here. We're just showing you different cases. If I compare to the first speaker, John, and then. But I think bringing more professional players into the field here as well is also important, because closing the virtual physical gap is something that we have in open hardware and we don't have in open source software. So yeah, these are my closing words, and I think now we should really start discussing.
Thank you, Robert. That was really rich in case studies. Really impressive.